most important journey you will take in your life is the one of self-discovery and transformation. Welcome to Elevate and Liberate podcast. I'm Ashlee Rose, and each week we'll dive deep into transforming our inner world in order to create the life and love you crave. Who are you really? And what's actually possible for you this lifetime? Subscribe now and let's elevate and liberate love, life, and self. Welcome everybody to another episode of Elevate and Liberate podcast. This is episode 4 of Creating Beyond Podcasts rebrand. I'm so happy to have you here with me. For those of you that have listened to any of the other 3 episodes that I have released in the last few weeks and love them, please feel free to comment on my YouTube videos or message me and let me know. I love hearing from you guys. And also, if there's an area or a topic that you'd love me to create an episode on, then please feel free to let me know as well. Contact me however you want to contact me, and let me know what's up in your world and what you would love for me to speak about on future episodes. These episodes are also being uploaded on YouTube, so if you're currently listening to this on audio, feel free to click out of the app you're listening to this in and go into YouTube. The link is in all of the show notes. And quickly before we begin this episode, I just wanted to mention some very exciting news. I'm actually on my way to Canada in 2 months' time, to Toronto, Canada, and then New York, America, and then London and Europe to facilitate some classes. Most of those will be Talk to the Entity classes and a whole bunch of other things. You can check out my schedule on ashlee-rose.com/events. And I would love to see you in the world somewhere if I haven't met you yet. So this episode has been inspired by an amazing Talk to the Entities class that I've just finished over the weekend. That was one of the most brilliant classes I've ever facilitated. And the Talk to the Entity classes are so much more than just learning how to speak or communicate with entities. More than that, they teach you how to begin to function beyond the 5 senses and really start to function from this space of perceiving and knowing and receiving that is innate to us. And in this class, what kept coming up is how not aware the participants were of how aware they actually are. And so I wanted to create an episode and speak to this massive topic of intuition or awareness that I honestly probably receive the most questions on. Like, how do you know the difference between your head and your intuition? How do you know what's the right answer? How do you know what's light and what's heavy? And there's an Indian saying that is this: the longest journey that you'll undertake is a foot long, the one from your head to your heart. And your heart, for me, I look at heart as your gut, your intuition, your awareness. It's where all of that lies, your consciousness, your infinite consciousness. And consciousness really is about the inclusion of everything and judgment of nothing. So it's the ability to be totally aware and totally present in all areas of your life. But most of us have been programmed since childhood to live out of fear and function from our heads, meaning thinking with our brains. And the thing is, intuition or awareness is where we naturally lived when we were a small child, before the fear, before the lack, before the need actually set in. And in that place of functioning from the infinite awareness that we have available to us, we feel like everything's possible and you cannot fail. And functioning from this space truly allows us to truly manifest anything we desire in life and to step into our infinite potential. So, how do we get so off track? We actually grow up in this super confusing and frightening world often. And due to that, most people slowly start to shift into our heads because of what we've been told as adults, because what we've been told growing up and shown on television, that the world is actually not a safe place. And so we grow up with this idea that our heads are actually the safest place to be, which is not actually true. And what happens is, in doing this, it makes us suffer more. Because as we continue to use our heads to try and think our way into infinite possibilities, we actually eliminate the infinite possibilities that are actually available to us. Because once we start functioning from our head, every choice that we make is always the choice that is the safest choice, the choice that you've decided will create the most for you, but it's actually not creating the most from you. It's creating the most for you based on safety, but not based on infinite possibility and your infinite potential and what's actually available to you to create as your life that you've never even dared dream of before. So many of us ask ourselves this question so many times a day: is this the right or wrong choice for me? And what will create the greatest for me? Or what is light and what is heavy? And how do you actually navigate your awareness? How do you actually navigate what's true for you? And the first part of this is really your willingness to depart from your head and function from awareness. Your willingness to acknowledge that there is a total difference between your mind and awareness or intuition. So, for the purpose of this episode, I'm going to call it awareness. But when I say awareness, I'm also talking about your intuition or your gut instinct that we all have. It is our natural, innate capacity and ability. And awareness is one of these misidentified superpowers. And I really believe it's something that we are so disempowered with and have no clue where to begin with this topic. Awareness is actually free. We all have access to it in every single moment. It's not lost, but we just don't know how it shows up or what it actually is. And growing up, I didn't believe that I was aware at all or intuitive at all. I thought that that was something that some people had and some people didn't have. And I had such bad anxiety growing up, and my mind didn't stop, and I was constantly confused that I wasn't even sure it was something that I could ever gain access to. I assumed I was like cursed or doomed in this area with an overactive mind without recognizing that awareness is innate. It is this built-in innate guidance system that we all have. And isn't that cool? So, how do you begin to tell the difference between your mind and your awareness? Your awareness is lightning quick. It drops in the moment before thinking. But the challenge I've actually come across working with so many people over the years is that many people believe that intuition shows up differently to the thoughts or the ideas in their head. And what if it actually doesn't? Are you someone that's actually looking for something else other than thoughts and ideas to label as intuition? And I used to believe that my awareness must have a different voice. I literally spent my entire life believing I wasn't aware because I decided that my intuition must sound different. It must seem like it was like God speaking from the clouds that was like, Ashlee, you must choose this. This is what's right for you. Yet it never occurred like that. So I bought my whole life that I actually didn't know, that I wasn't aware, and that I absolutely was not intuitive. So I'd really love to offer you a different possibility in this area. What if the problem isn't that you don't know, that you're not aware, that you're not intuitive? What if the only problem for you is that you've never been empowered to know how awareness actually shows up for you? And awareness shows up differently for everyone. But for me, it actually shows up as this fleeting thought and an idea, or something that I just say out loud. And I'd really love to give you some examples of this, because it's one thing to talk about it, but it's completely different to actually experience some examples of how awareness can actually show up. And this was so brilliantly displayed in the Talk to the Entities class over the weekend. So I'm going to use some examples just to give you some idea. One of the participants, when we first started class, just before we started the first day of class, she said to me, out of the blue, "Does this class have a manual? Oh my gosh, I forgot to print the manual off." And I said, "Yeah, it does have a manual, but you don't have to worry about printing the manual off because I do that." And then I turned to my host and I said, "Did you bring the manuals?" And she said, "Oh my gosh, I completely forgot the manuals." Now that example in itself is actually that participant having the awareness, perceiving the future of these manuals being forgotten, receiving that information, and then actually speaking that awareness out loud without really knowing why she said that. It just come out of her mouth. That is an example of awareness. Another example is during class when we were in a section of the manual that's called people entities. So this was the Talk to the Entities class, and we were talking about all different types of entities that actually exist in the world that walk with us on this planet. So we got to this section about people entities, and one of the other participants said, she started just talking, and she said, wow, I realized when I was a nurse that I used to be able to communicate with patients that were actually dying and passing over. And she was actually able to like gift their families information about like their last wishes, even when they couldn't communicate. And one day that there was this friend at work that told her that she should stop doing that. And as she was talking, I was like, interesting. Like none of this energy is kind of congruent. Why is she saying this? And I asked her a question and I said, do you have a question? Or who are you aware of right now? And she was like, oh my gosh, that friend that told me that I should stop communicating with people that are dying actually also passed over. And I said, well, is he here with you now? And she said, oh my gosh. And she started crying through this acknowledgement that he was actually present with her. And I said, this is another way that awareness actually shows up. And then the last example I really want to give you to kind of open up this space for you and get you to start really beginning to acknowledge where this is already occurring for you is one of the other participants started asking a question and saying that she does so much doubt. She has so many moments that she goes into this doubt, this judgment of herself that she can't seem to change. And I actually said to her, wait a second, if there's something that you can't shift and change, if there's something that hasn't shifted and changed for more than a few months, when you've been looking at that thing from a particular point of view, and the point of view she was looking at it from was that it's doubt, and it doesn't change, it's because it's actually not that. What if there's something else going on? And I said to her, okay, random question, but is it actually doubt? Or is there something else going on underneath this that you're labeling as doubt? And she said, oh my God, something else. And I said, so is this actually how your awareness of entities shows up for you? And she was like, whoa, it's my awareness of entities. And this is the thing, it's like we perceive so much. We are so aware of everything that's always going on around us. And this reality, call it being empathic or being sensitive, picking up on lots of different energies. So we're constantly perceiving all different energies and everything going on around us. We're perceiving things, we're perceiving other people's stuff, we're perceiving entities. And because we're not taught that we're aware, because we're taught that everything we think or everything we say is ours, then we're discouraged away from actually asking the questions which would empower us to know what is true or what's truly going on in that moment. And then we filter this awareness that we have into a thinking process or an understanding process to make sense of it. And then all of a sudden you've lost your awareness, or you've decided you've lost your awareness, or you've decided you're not aware. But what if what you're speaking and what's actually going on in your head is actually awareness? Oh, I was just thinking about this, or there was this random thought that come up. No, it's not you thinking about it, and it's not a random thought. You're aware of something or someone, and now you're expressing that awareness through speaking. If what you're saying doesn't seem to make sense, or it's out of context, or out of the blue, what if you began to get curious and ask, what or who am I aware of here? What if you started beginning to question everything? Because what I've truly realized over the years of being so present with what's going on in my head and what's coming out of my mouth is that basically every thought and every idea that I have is not mine. Even every time you hear your voice, what if that's not even you? And I know this could seem like a really weird thing to start actually acknowledging, but we are these infinite beings. We are conscious beings. And the molecular configuration of us is energy, space, and consciousness. Just like the molecular configuration of water is hydrogen and oxygen. That's what makes water. What makes us the infinite being or the soul or the spirit is energy, space, and consciousness. We are not our mind. That is not us. Our mind is just a filtering system used to protect us and keep us safe. But if our mind can't determine that we will be safe choosing something in particular, then it tells us not to choose that. So this beginning to start functioning from awareness again, this journey from head to heart is a practice and it will take time. It's not an overnight thing because you've spent probably not only just this lifetime rejecting and dismissing your awareness in favor of figuring it out, in favor of functioning from your mind because you've decided that's what's going to keep you safe. But every time you say yes to your awareness, and every time you acknowledge what you know, your awareness gets stronger. So in this class, and it's only a 2.5-day class, every time someone randomly said something, like the participant that asked about the manuals, or the participant that just started randomly talking about her friend, the first thing I said after we got to the awareness of what actually was going on, I said, acknowledge that that is awareness. What if you don't have to learn how to become more aware? You already are. The problem is in actually acknowledging how it shows up for you and actually beginning to recognize and start to get curious about what if everything I'm even thinking or every idea I'm having is my awareness of an entity? Is it my awareness of a creative idea? Is my awareness of something that wants to communicate with me? And a really good example of how awareness also shows up is if any of you have an animal or a pet. And I'm sure you've all done this before, where you've looked at your pet and then just said out loud, they need to go to the toilet, or they're hungry, or they want to go for a walk. That's not you thinking about it. That's actually you having the awareness of what they're communicating with you, of what's actually going on for them. But the greatest unkindness we can be to ourselves is when we call that, oh, I just thought the dog needs to go to the toilet, or I just thought the dog wants food. No, you actually just communicated with the dog. And the dog just was communicating with you non-verbally to tell you that it wants to go for a walk or that it's hungry or that it wants to go to the toilet. So what if you started acknowledging that you actually know that there is nothing wrong with your intuition and there's nothing wrong with your awareness, and start actually getting curious about how it shows up for you? Because in order to strengthen your awareness, it's this choice by choice process to get you to the place where you will begin to trust you more. So a few steps that you guys can begin to use to really strengthen what you know is, number one is to actually eliminate the words, I don't know. Because every time you tell yourself you don't know, because that's what we've been taught growing up, that we don't know. And how many times have you heard someone tell you that you don't know or that you're wrong? So anytime you tell yourself you don't know, you are literally creating that as your reality, because your belief or your point of view creates your reality. So all of a sudden, you saying you don't know is actually creating a reality of total confusion as your world. And until you're willing to acknowledge that you do know, you cannot create beyond the I don't know reality that you keep functioning from. So number one is eliminate the words I don't know. Number two is to start acknowledging that you do know, always, even if it doesn't seem like that. Or even if you're caught in your head, what if you gave yourself one of the greatest gifts, and that is not to lie to yourself? Because every time you say, I don't know, you're actually lying to yourself. It's not true. So even if you're caught up in confusion, even if you're caught up in this place of not being sure, acknowledge that you do know. You do know, but you may just not be willing to have the awareness or clarity in that moment. And this is one of the really steps that began to change everything for me, because even when I was telling myself I don't know or caught up in that space of confusion, I'd still acknowledge, okay, it's not true that I'm confused. I do know. And from that space, number 3 is asking a question. So when you're in this space of confusion or not sure, or telling yourself that you're not aware or you're not intuitive or you don't know, ask, what am I aware of here? What do I know here? If I trusted me here, what would I know? And what would I actually be aware of? And start asking those questions, because question opens up the doorways to a different possibility. Unless you're willing to ask a question, you cannot open yourself up to literally creating a different reality for you or transforming where you are to where you'd like to be. So ask the question, what am I aware of? What am I perceiving? What do I know? And these questions will start opening you back up to the infinite awareness that you always have access to, the infinite field of energy, infinite consciousness, where all quote unquote answers to the questions you're asking actually exist. But you have to strengthen yourself back into your knowing, into trusting you. And that is 100% your responsibility. No one can actually tell you if your knowing is correct either. And this was a big one for me, because I was constantly looking outside of myself for someone else to validate my awareness, for someone else to validate my knowing. And again, so many of us already know, we already know. And you might get this awareness or this like whisper that might say, this relationship is no longer working, or he or she is no longer good for me. Right? But then what we do is we try and filter that through our mind to make it right or wrong. And then we look outside of us and turn outside of us to a psychic or to our friends or to our family to validate that awareness is true. But unfortunately, no one can tell you if your knowing is correct or not, because no one is you. What is true for you is not true for anybody else. That relationship that you're in may not be working for you and may no longer be true for you, but it may be true for a family member, or it may be true for a friend. And based on their way of looking at it, based on their filters that they see the world through, it may actually be working. So this is where no one can tell you if your knowing is correct or not. No one or nothing is ever going to and ever can relieve you of the responsibility of knowing what's real and true for you. And sometimes that's a really hard pill to swallow. But this is where you really start going from being disempowered to totally empowered and claiming the source that you actually are. And this is where I really believe the journey begins, is knowing that no one can do it for you. And are you committed enough to start taking that journey? So I hope this episode has been a contribution to you guys. This has probably opened up a can of worms for all of you. But the key takeaways is that you already know. How does your awareness show up that you're not acknowledging? And what if you started getting really present with everything you said, with everything you heard, with every thought that went on in your head, and asked, okay, is this actually me thinking, or is this an awareness? And if you even just started with that, without having to figure out what awareness it is, or who it is, or what it is, if you just started acknowledging and took this simple step to go from deciding that you are thinking to acknowledging that it is an awareness, that is going to strengthen your awareness and make it louder and louder and louder over time. So, my friends, I hope you have a beautiful week. If you have any questions from this episode, please feel free to put it in the YouTube comments or message me privately. This is a really big topic, and I have started to have the awareness to create like a one-day specialty class about navigating awareness and really gifting you guys practical steps and practical tools and a place where you can practice knowing that you know. So if that's something that you're interested in, strengthening your intuition or awareness and navigating it, knowing how it shows up for you, what it is, and then what to do with it, please feel free to message me and let me know, because that is very up in my world right now to really contribute to the world in that way. Because if you are willing to claim and own what you know, if you are willing to function from the infinite awareness and infinite consciousness that is available to you, could you ever have a problem? Would there ever be any problems? Or would all of your life actually then come to you with ease, with joy, and with glory? And would you then be able to truly step into your infinite potential and the infinite possibilities that are actually available to you to create as your life? So, as I mentioned, I hope you all have a beautiful week. I'm so grateful for you all here. There'll be another episode next week. We're going to talk about bodies or something else. I'm not sure yet. I've got a few guests lined up. But like I said, if there's anything you'd love me to speak to, please feel free to let me know. Bye, guys. Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, I'd be so grateful if you left a 5-star review and share it with someone you know. Don't forget to subscribe to the podcast to be notified of upcoming episodes. You can find more about me at ashlee-rose.com. And remember, creating the life and love you crave is absolutely possible and available to each and every one of you.